So the Mutual Validation Club was right there. Obasanjo was in attendance. And there he was, even as Ibrahim Badamashi Babangida was acknowledging what we already all knew. MKO won the election. So what was IBB telling us? Oh, I forget. The Mutual Validation Club was right there. The Jagaban of the universe, who today sits in Aso Rock, a beneficiary of Abiola's sacrifices, was also sat there. Oh, and don't worry, I'm sure Mr. Peter Obi already knows exactly what I think of his attendance at that gathering.
All right, so I'm going to allow you to watch the rest of the video shortly, but IBB is back in the news, and Nigerians are not really happy with his new book he titled A Journey in Service, which has actually sparked outrage, especially over his role in the annulment of the June 12, 1993 election. So in the book, IBB admits that MKO Abiola won, but tries to shift blame, saying that the annulment happened without his permission. But Nigerians are not buying this particular story. So human rights lawyer Dele Farotimi has spoken out strongly on this issue. He said IBB will forever be defined by the evil he did on that day in 1993. He also accused Babangida of blaming everyone but himself, and even called the people at the book launch a gathering of vultures. He also criticized those who attended, including Mr. Peter Obi and others, saying that they are part of a mutual validation club. Also, Dele Farotimi had a lot more to say, but I will not be going into all the details here. Instead, watch and listen to what himself have to say about this particular issue. Stay tuned.
Look, it is not by accident that for over 2 decades, history was removed from our curriculum. The curriculum is already useless enough as it is. It's graduating engineers that cannot build roads, and you still have to bring engineers from Lebanon, from Turkey, from China, everywhere but Nigeria, on almost all major projects in a country of over 200 million people. We are exporting. Look, don't let me be derailed. Critical point is this: deliberately, almost everybody capable of remembering have found themselves undermined by something or the other. They've either been forced into some form of exile or the other, or they've been bought and silenced. So nobody ever seems to remember anything again. The demand that we must forget. And the thing about our memories, and it is critical that we never ever forget this. The thing about our memories is that they are also the guides to our future. Your memory of what transpired the other time would help you to remember what choices to avoid today. Look, let me share something with you. After the NSAS protest in 2020, I began to observe a very strange phenomenon on my Facebook feed. Facebook was my introduction to social media. And then I noticed something very strange began to happen in early 2021 actually. I couldn't access my Facebook memories. So I had my lawyers write a letter to Facebook for no reason whatsoever. Every other person could access their own, but I couldn't access my memory. Some people who posted stuff that I had posted years before were able to repost it, but I, the original person who made the post, just couldn't access my memories. I came into the public space around this time and I mentioned it. And then after a while, after like 2-3 years, it stopped. I could access my memories again. And it reminded me of something that had happened, the debate that had taken place between myself and my assistant, I had religiously demanded that my memories on Facebook be reposted on the anniversaries. And the reason is very simple. My reason is that I had found that as long as you have told the truth, memories are consistently repeating what had been said in the past, and it was still speaking to things that were happening in the present that would suggest that nothing had changed. And then I realized very quickly that the truth has prophetic properties, but those are truths found, and those are words that are found on truth. So I now began to realize that one of the reasons my Facebook memory was being attacked, and I say that deliberately, was an attack by Meta and the Nigerian government. It was because my words were beginning to take on the gaps of prophecies. My memories, when repeated, began to seem like prophecies that were given years back, but they were no prophecies. They were simply the truth that I spoke about what I was looking at in the moment. And so, speaking the truth in the moment, building truthful memories guides a society to sanity. If we, as a society, instead of doing this, now becomes deliberate in our attempt at distortion of memories or deletion of memories so that people do not remember what had gone before, how do they guide themselves into the future? Sometime in this last week, a collection of men and women sat in Abuja, and a decrepit man, lacking in integrity, a man who blighted this country, was launching a book. He was launching a book where he essentially honed up to the crimes that he committed against the Nigerian people and the Nigerian state. A crime that culminated in the ruination of multiple lives, the death and burial of untold numbers in unmarked graves. He didn't tell us, by the way, who killed Dele Giwa. Not a word. At least I haven't seen any from the excerpts that have been flying around with the book that they are deliberately giving away cheaply because it's a bundle of lies. But sat in that room, before talking about those sat in that room, I think it is important that, without intending to scandalize anyone, I must draw this parallel quickly. About 2-3 years ago, I ran into some video of members of the family of a dead politician, one of those who was actually murdered by the coupists in the first coup. And his children were celebrating, I think, a memoriam in his honor. But here is where I was. At the point when their father was killed in the first coup, the man was reputed as being the most corrupt of Balewa's ministers. But by the time his children were celebrating his memorial, he was being celebrated as a great nationalist. This is possible in a society that has failed to document its history, or that has resorted to a distortion of history, So those who should be examples of reprobates are being nullified, even as the witnesses of that history have died out. So as a society, when you fail to document history, you concede the right to write whatever they care in their hagiographic exercises. So yeah, Babangida can sit down, probably pay some fat cat ghostwriter, tell his story of disservice to a people and to the memories of multiple persons whom he disrespected with his many lies, half-truths, and urban legends. And if we shall fail to take on the duty of preserving our memories and writing our stories, we will yet find that in generations to come, the rogues will be the ones being applauded, and they would have managed to criminalize the saints. The real heroes would have been forgotten. And then in that all, you have what I would call the Mutual Validation Club. One of those, and I'm not talking about written history, I was there as a witness of history. I remember Chief Obasanjo, or shall I say General Obasanjo, in that season, talking about how Abiola was not the Messiah that Nigeria required. And when that Messiah came to power in 1999, stepping on the blood of Abiola, he did nothing to acknowledge the sacrifice of Abiola. He spent 8 years running away from the ghost and shadow of Abiola. And in looking to erase Abiola's memory, he desecrated even the memories of all those who lost their lives in the struggle for the actualization of June 12. The many lies about Abiola began to fly around in those days to justify painting him out and refusing to acknowledge the sacrifice. The Mutual Validation Club was right there. Obasanjo was in attendance. And there he was, even as Ibrahim Badamashi Babangida was acknowledging what we already all knew. MQ won the election. So what was IBB telling us? Oh, I forget. The Mutual Validation Club was right there. The Jagaban of the universe, who today sits in Aso Rock, a beneficiary of Abiola's sacrifices, was also sat there. Oh, and don't worry, I'm sure Mr. Peter Obi already knows exactly what I think of his attendance at that gathering. Nobody sat in that gathering covered themselves with any glory. It shows a crass lack of sensitivity for those who have suffered and are continuing to suffer as a result of what happened in 1993. IBB will be forever defined by the evil it did on that day, or rather to that day. IBB is busy pontificating and blaming everybody but himself. A gathering of vultures. So let's be clear. All those who gathered there were merely members of a Mutual Validation Club. Ibrahim Babangida told us nothing we didn't know. All he did was what he has always done. Play one end against the other. With one mouth, he was talking about how it wasn't an Igbo coup. With the same mouth, he was talking about how Awolowo is not a lover of the Igbo people. What does it matter now? Which one is which? After how many dead? What does it matter? We have a duty to remember, because in this land, we're becoming a land of amnesiacs. We remember nothing of consequence, but we also forget nothing that will divide. The Igbo this, Yoruba that, Fulani this, Hausa that, Ijaw that. There is always a reason to be divided. There is always a reason. to be divided. Or have you seen them divided in their gathering of vultures? You forget too easily, but they never forget how easy it is to confuse you. They always stick with the script. We owe a debt to those who have died, not to forget. We owe a debt to ourselves who are yet alive, not to forget. We are the sum total of our memories, and when we as a collective forget everything of importance, how do we guide ourselves into our future? We owe a debt to those who have died. Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola is no more today. He can't speak for himself. All the pernicious lies that have been told since his death to justify the annulment of the election, they were barely afterthoughts. I voted in that election. I wasn't a child. I was old enough to vote, and it was the first election in which I voted. All these pernicious accusations came after the fact, just to justify the annulment, to justify what a bunch of ne'er-do-well sat down in a room to do. If he was a drug pusher, why wasn't this in the public space for us to decide whether we wanted a drug pusher or not? That was in the public space in 2023, and it didn't make any difference to the outcome because our choice did not count. The only reason our choice did not count was because it did not in 1993. If our choices had mattered in 1993, they wouldn't have dared 30 years later to tell us to go to court. Let us be clear about that. We have a duty to the dead to remember. Those who died, whether they were active participants in the protests against Babangida, the subsequent ruination under Abacha, everything that followed from June 12, 1993 till date, all the evils that have overtaken this country are traceable to the many actions of Ibrahim Badamashi Babangida before June 12, crystallized on June 12. The ultimate expression of citizenship is the right to choose who leads you. That is the ultimate expression of citizenship. In the absence of the right to choose your leaders, you are not citizens, you are subjects. I expressed my right as a citizen to vote on the 12th of June 1993. That right was taken away from me by a group of thieves led by Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, ably explained away by General Obasanjo, originally resisted by the likes of Bulaba, who are today beneficiaries of that evil, but have all forgotten and are today more repressive than what we all fought at that time. Please, you have a duty to remember. We cannot be the land devoid of memories because your memories guide your future. In the absence of memories of where you have been, how do you remember where you are going? Yorùbá will say, "Tọ́mọdé bá ṣubú, àwòwájú, tágbàlagbà bá ṣubú, ẹ̀yìn ló ń wò." If the youth stumbles, he looks forward. When the elder stumbles, he looks back. The only reason he's looking back is because he wants to know exactly what is it that he just tripped over, given the fact that he's been around the block many times. He should know better. His memory guides him to demand to know why. What is guiding us to demand to know why? Do you really believe that 2023 would have happened if 1993 had not happened? When are you going to make these critical connects? IBB can never repay the debt he owes. Only God will demand recompense of him, because obviously those who have come after him have been even more worse than him. So Make no mistake about it. IBB told no truths that were hitherto unknown. And he admitted to the most controversial of all, only in an effort to subjectify every one of the many lies by which he has defined his life. So move on. If you're looking for truth, stop doubting your own memories. Look for truthful accounts of history and look for those who will tell you the truth. Do not be the land devoid of memories. But be careful where you read your history. Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida is not a witness of truth, and his place in the gallery of rogues is all but assured. And he said, I'm going to see you all next week. And when you're coming to church next week, come with your tithes and your offering. And before I go, it is critical for all of us to remember this. In the absence of electoral reform, and I mean meaningful electoral reform, one that allows for independent candidacy, one. Two, that demands transmission of results from BVAS to IREV, not at the discretion of INEC, but compulsory transmission. Diaspora voting. Those are the three legs of electoral reform that might make 2027 meaningful. In the absence of that, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Even with that, you still have to be vigilant. But in the absence of that, don't waste your time. You see the politicians moving from one party to the other. The political transfer season has commenced. But the only commodity in that market is you. Whilst they are busy uniting themselves, finding mega platform, forming party and alliances, you see the short devil of Kaduna trapezing up and down the place. You see, I'm sure you've seen Brother Atiku going on his pilgrimage to Aremu, Kwakwanso going up and down the place. All politicians doing their things. Their transfer season has opened. You, the commodities, find yourselves before it's too late. The only way you matter is if your vote counts. Your vote must count. Don't forget that. So I'm going to see you next week. Stay blessed. Love you all. God bless.